We've gone through the first 3 minutes. Once again, we don't have any sound on the stream. I was just literally what I was saying was we have sound on the stream. So let me know if you can hear that. We are here in the studio again. If Kyle, if you can work on that. Here's the thing that
we're working on it.
I don't have a good feel for this Illinois game. It's bothered me all week because I feel like this is a pivot game for both teams, for Penn State and for Illinois, in terms of ways that this game is going to go. And there's a couple of things that are a part of that, and there's a couple of things that we're going to get into today. Okay, thank goodness. So what I was saying earlier to the stream people is this is the first time we're going to have quality audio, and then we start with no audio, so that's great. But we're good now. Thank you to everyone for your patience today. Getting into this game, we're still learning about both of these teams through the first 2 weeks. Can Bret Beilema build a consistent winner in the Big Ten West? That's a big question that we've had over the last couple of years. Last year, this was a very good Illinois team. We came into this season saying, hey, we don't know about Illinois yet. We got to find out through the first 2 weeks, and through the first 2 weeks, it has not been great. But there are still elements of this team that can threaten Penn State, so Penn State can't take them lightly as a 1-1 team that gave up over 200 yards rushing last week. On the Penn State side, can they vanquish the ghost of the 2021 Illinois game? Those things that they can do on offense, that Illinois can do on offense, they present a similar challenge to what West Virginia brought in the first week of the season. An athletic quarterback that can move, he can extend plays, and a running game built on the offensive line. This team on paper, and what we've seen so far, does not present the same challenges as West Virginia, where they're not, their offensive line is not as cohesive, they're not as good of a unit together, and there are some guys that you can straight beat on certain plays. It felt like there was a more difficult situation with West Virginia and what they were able to do up front. But you never know. It's a road game. It's the first Big Ten game of the season. The perception versus the reality of these two teams, we're going to be getting into that throughout the show in terms of what Penn State in 2023 is, especially on the defensive side, versus what they were in 2021. So that's kind of setting the scene for Penn State, avenging that loss. Significant scar tissue for the Nittany Lion fan base that I don't know is particularly shared with the coaching staff and with the players and everyone in the building. So that's what we're going to get through the next 90 minutes, and we're going to talk about each of those positions and those places in depth. So another thing I want to make sure that we talk about today is the Penn State offense. This is going to be something that I think going through today, the part that I'm not sure about, saying, Kyle, that I don't know about this game. The last couple games, I felt like I knew how Penn State was going to attack what we saw, or at least I knew the challenges presented and the likely things that we would see.
Yes.
Penn State can do a couple of different things here, and that's going to be, to me, where this game pivots, is how they attack the Illinois defense, which does present some challenges. There are a few teams in the country where they can say, you can't do this. Whatever this is, like, you can't throw on this team. You can't run between the tackles on Illinois. Most teams have straight up avoided doing that. Is Penn State going to do that? How are they going to attack? With what personnel are they going to attack? I was doing some numbers crunching before the show today.
Numbers crunching? Oh boy, this can't be good.
So the perception has been, in my mind, that Penn State has played predominantly with two tight ends on the football field, and they have affected the game that way. And for the most part, from a production standpoint, that's true. Drew Aller has a passer rating of 149.5 in the NFL.
Yeah, not bad.
158.3 is perfect. Mm-hmm. So he's pretty damn good in 12 personnel. But they've run with three receivers. And by the way, for those that don't know, 12 personnel is two tight ends on the football field. And this has been the conversation all offseason. Is it 12 personnel, two tight ends, or is Penn State, their nature, what they want to be, is they want to be a three-receiver team. Spread the field out, attack all parts of the field. They have done that, from a pure counting perspective. 51% of the time they have been in their 11 personnel. They've gotten touchdowns out of it. They've made plays. It's, in a lot of ways, it is their base offense.
It's what they go to on every basis. You've got a good receiving core around them, so they want to stick with that. They want to get three guys out there.
And they want to develop that receiving core too. And to me, that's the question is that what they do today? Do they major in 11 personnel? Not a 50-50 split, not a 51-41 in terms of like what the numbers are right now, but do they affect the game more with 3 receivers than they have with 2 tight ends? And we'll get into the nature, too, of how they've been attacking in the passing game with those 2 tight ends, because I think that's interesting today. And I guess the thing that I've been concerned for Penn State and Penn State fans going into this game is if you're loading up the box against West Virginia, not a big front, Delaware, FCS team, you're getting what you want.
Mm-hmm. You can do whatever you want to on a daily basis against those teams.
You had an advantage there with your tight ends that are good run blockers. I don't know that you do this week. Mm-hmm. So is that what you're going to do? Because like a template for what you could see Penn State do is what they put on film last week against Delaware that has a similar but different defensive front. Yes. Where the design was to gum up the middle and to let them not run between the tackles because, as I said on the post game, I think I've said earlier this week, like 90% of offenses in college football run one scheme. They run in between the tackles. It's called inside zone. Everyone does it. James Franklin has said, like, basically everyone runs the same plays. They're all built off of that. Defenses like this are designed to take it away, and Illinois is good enough to take it away. So where are we going today? And that's going to be kind of the things I'm trying to lay out is like, where are we going today from an offensive perspective? And then from a defensive perspective, I think we have a better understanding of that because I don't think Illinois has the ability to adapt and evolve, but they can do some different things within that might cause Penn State some issues on defense. And of course, we'll get into talking about the defensive tackles and if they're big enough and all of those things. So that's really just laying out the landscape for today. Penn State should be favored in this game. Penn State should win this game. But there are players and things that might make it a closer game. Or, I don't want to say put Penn State on the map because they're already a top 10 team. But if Penn State can do certain things in this game, it's going to put the rest of the Big Ten on notice. And it is going to absolutely put them in the contention of, hey, this team is contending for a Big Ten title this year. Not that they haven't put it on tape against West Virginia, but it's just another opportunity, another demon to slay, another ghost to vanquish. We got the sage out today for Penn State fans. We're trying to expel all the ghosts out of the House Franklin, and that is where we're going into Champaign, Illinois today on the Penn State Tailgate Show. Hopefully we have everybody with us. Thank you to everyone who's on the stream and here is listening on 99.5 The Bus. Kyle, give me a thumbs up if we've got audio.
We have audio everywhere. We are sitting pretty. We have clean audio as well. It sounds good. My heart is happy.
You gave me goosebumps. Now let's get into this week's open practice highlights. For those people watching on the stream, you're going to see Penn State practice from today. And for those of you listening on 99.5 The Bus, you get to hear more of me giving you a preview of the game. So stay tuned. We'll be back. We're going to be talking about the Penn State offense, and we're going to dig into some of those numbers I just gave you so far on the next segment of the Penn State Tailgate Show, powered by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. These are your Penn State football practice highlights. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Check out a fresh look at the Nittany Lions weekly on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Penn State heads into its first Big Ten game of the year against Illinois on Saturday. Usually, this isn't a game that Penn State fans would get juiced up for. But fans remember the loss that unraveled the 2021 season 2 years ago when Illinois racked up 357 yards rushing on the way to a historic 20-18 victory in a record 9 overtimes in that game. Since then, there have been questions about the Penn State defensive tackles, and those have persisted all offseason. So, is Penn State ready for a new test up front? Head coach James Franklin says he's been happy with his front seven overall this year, and he's looking for them to just make improvements each week, which they did in week 2. In the end, Penn State is not asking its defense to stop every run for no gain. They just need to get critical stops to put Illinois in a position where they can't convert third and short with the running game. Then, the team's strength, its pass rush, and its coverage can take over. Much has been made about the Penn State running game not breaking off big runs through the first 2 games of the season. Part of that is because they face conservative defenses that are willing to give up yardage on the ground in order to keep a lid on back-breaking big-time plays. Illinois is not like that. They play an aggressive, single-high coverage that stacks the box but allows more leeway for big runs if Nick Singleton and Katron Allen can break into the open field through that 8-man defense. We're not saying that Penn State is going to break a big run this week, but the situation is much more favorable than it was to start the year. From a schematic perspective, this is an excellent time for the duo to prove themselves to be superstars. However, there's a fine line between that and pressing too much. Yet Penn State has shown that they're not a one-trick offense. What'd you think? We're not going to show you or talk about Drew Aller? Of course we are. According to PFF, the fresh-faced starter has been incredibly efficient through the first 2 games of the season, compiling a 90% adjusted completion percentage. Last week, he was a responsible and mature player, completing the passes that the Delaware defense gave him and not pressing. Some quarterbacks may have gotten impatient and thrown the ball into dangerous windows that the defense was baiting them into, but Aller resisted the urge to do so. This week, he'll likely face a different challenge. Can he fit the ball into tight, man-covered windows? And more importantly, can his receivers get open? Each week, there's a new question to ask and answer with the first-time starter and this offense. As always, we can't wait to find out. Those are your Penn State practice highlights. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. I get it. You didn't make it to today's game. You didn't plan ahead in time. Nobody's perfect. We totally get it. I'm T. Frank, and I'm here to help you with that for the rest of the season, though. Tixman Gym is your source for reliable tickets to Penn State home football games. Join the most exciting atmosphere in college football with Tixman Gym. Primetime games, noon kickoffs, big opponents, whatever you have in mind, whatever game you want to go to, they've got tickets for you. If you've been looking for a source of Penn State football tickets, a reliable one, Tixman Gym at TixmanGym.com, formerly PSUTixman.com, has been running his ticket exchange in Wilmington, Delaware for over 25 years. Every buyer is handled with courtesy and respect, and every purchase is guaranteed. Most tickets transfer to your Ticketmaster email address. So get your tickets, 302-521-8380 or TixmanGym.com. That's 302-521-8380. Are you a company that is passionate about athletics and wants to tap into the Penn State sports community? Maybe you're a community organization in State College, Center County, Pennsylvania, or even planet Earth. Are you interested in growing your brand and leveraging our YouTube and podcast platform? Or are you just a person that has some money to spend? If you're any of those things, or something I didn't bring up just now, consider advertising on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube show. We have a dedicated and passionate audience that is just waiting to hear from you. Through me, talking about your business on the show. That's how we do it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, email Michelle DeLee Hamilton at michelle@comanpub.com. That's michelle@comanpub.com. We're waiting to hear from you. Through me, talking about you. Again, that's how we do it.
Been missed, or missed in the sense that you're not going to be able to turn around and run. I mean, Drew seems to have a pretty good connection with Tyler Warren. We saw that from a pitch and catch aspect several times on Saturday. And I think that those things are kind of what's going to keep games going, what's going to keep drives going, which is going to, eventually end up in points against opponents that are not at a level that Delaware is at. So I think there's encouraging signs that can be gleaned from this. You're not going to look at it and say, well, it's great that Penn State overwhelmed, FCS opponent. That's what they're supposed to do. But there are like micro aggressions, I guess you could say, that you could look at Penn State's offense especially and say, hey, they're doing the things that we thought that they were capable of doing.
Yeah, one last thing I'll say about this is that this is also a good warm-up for one of the teams that they're going to see on the schedule, because guess who plays 3 safeties? Ohio State's defense, coming from the Big 12. This is the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Producer Kyle is with us as well today. Kyle, by the way, I want to thank Kyle for working so hard. This is something I should have done the last 2 weeks, is thank everybody who's been a part of these shows so far. And you have people do that at the end of shows, and I have forgotten to do it for 2 or 3 weeks now, so I'm going to do it right now. Thanks to Dusty, our engineer. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Jason Lord, Chris Forshee, everyone that's been involved. Jamal, is jumping on the show. He's producing the Coach's Corner, which is coming up in just a little bit. This is a great, highly produced, well-oiled machine that we're still working the kinks out of through the first month of the season. So this is the unprecedented stuff we're trying to do in terms of having a live stream and a radio show going at the same time. Something that is done in other places, but as somebody who personally is doing this for the first time, this has been an adventure so far, and everyone who's supported that adventure, including you that is listening, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's been a part of this. Let's talk some Penn State football, Kyle.
Let's do it. Yes.
So I've had a hard time putting this game in order this week.
How so?
So not in a narrative sense, and that's partly in a narrative sense, but like, what is the cause and effect that is going to create the outcome in this game? Because there's a bunch of variables, as I said, that we might see some shifts from both sides this week. It is a good pivot week for teams that Penn State hasn't showed a whole lot in terms of they did what they did against West Virginia, against Delaware. On offense, and we'll get into that in this segment. And that's really where I said in the first segment, are they going to shift to a different attack? Let's explain what they've done so far. Penn State has done a lot of 12 personnel big formations, 7 people on the line of scrimmage, and both running into that and then play action off of that. Some of their biggest plays have come from keeping both tight ends in to block, and then having 2-man routes with a check down and creating explosive plays that way. Think back to the West Virginia game. That was where 2 of their touchdowns came from, was that particular style of formation, that particular style of action. I don't know that that's the best way of attacking a defense that wants you to play that way. They want everything to be in the trenches. That's how they are built. That's what they're looking for. So Penn State against Delaware tried to do some of those similar things, but Delaware, in the way they played that game, kept 8 in coverage even when there were 9 people in the box. They basically said, we see what you're trying to do, and you can run if you want, but you're not going to get those explosive play action touchdowns. This week against Illinois, we take a look at the other side of the field. Illinois last week, I can tell you exactly how it happened, that the defense kind of had this fundamental breakdown. And it starts at the quarterback position with the running game. And that's another area of, I don't know how Penn State's planning to attack this week, because they can't attack. The most effective way of what we saw was what Kansas did with a running quarterback. Kansas just politely declined to run between the tackles. They ran laterally the whole game. They ran around the edge. They did a lot of option plays with the quarterback and the running back on the edge. And they put those big physical edge defenders, not the 3 defensive tackles in the middle, but the guys on the outside, they put those guys in conflict. And then when they wanted to run in the middle, they did something that we've seen before, but is more rare in college football. So there's the offensive linemen, the way they line up. The gap between them is what the defense plays, right? Sometimes you can play a man and then you play 2 gaps. Manny Diaz's team plays the actual empty space. Some defenses play the shoulder of the offensive lineman, but you're not playing man to man. You're playing the space in between the offensive linemen. Kansas lined up with like a dump truck of space on the inside of the offensive line, which is not typical. Normally you have rather tight splits, is what they're called. So what they were doing is, to run in between the tackles, they made the defensive tackle the read man in their option game. So you leave a guy unblocked on every zone play, or most zone plays. That's how you try to get an advantage of getting one of those gaps on the defense, is you leave one guy unblocked and you overgap the other side. So they just did that to the defensive tackles in the middle of the defense. That's how they ran between the tackles. I don't think Penn State is going to do that this week. They don't have, unless Bo Prabula is in the game, they don't have that level of athleticism to threaten that way. Also, you don't want to do the exact same thing that somebody did a week ago. That's a little crazy. So what does Penn State's variation of running outside of the defensive end, and in this situation, Jer'Zhan Newton, Illinois' best football player, a probable top 15 pick, I mean, he is a massive human being that runs really well.
Yeah, I'd say he's a guaranteed top 15. He's a lottery pick type guy. He's a guy that you're like, you're going first round. We'll just chalk that up already. We'll move on to someone else.
Yeah.
But he's good.
He is good. So how do you avoid a game wrecker like that? How do you avoid not allow Illinois to dictate the game, to do what you want to do, but also be aware that you're not going to run into dead plays. You're not going to create dead plays. So Penn State, what they did last week is they went with those heavy formations and they ran outside of the defensive end. But this week, the defensive end, again...
is good enough. You can't do that.
Yeah. Are you expecting Caden Wallace and Theo Johnson to block that dude in a double-team situation? I think you can... To me, that's the question, is does Penn State have the offensive line to go toe-to-toe with this team? And
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do. I think I look as someone who, thank you for explaining everything, by the way, to everyone, because as someone who does not know football in the similar sense you do, it's good to get an explanation of a lot of things on how something's going to work. And I look at someone similar to, in the NFL, the pro level, J.J. Watt. Yeah. How do you beat J.J. Watt? You get far enough around him, and sometimes you say, we're going to let J.J. Watt be J.J. Watt, and we're just going to go beat everyone else on the field.
Yeah.
You're just going to risk it for the biscuit, in a funny turn of phrase, and say, J.J. Watt can do whatever he wants in this game, but we're going to beat the other 10 guys on defense. We're going to make their days the worst they've ever had, and then we're going to let him do whatever he wants, and we'll just live with it. That's what Penn State's going to do.
And that's kind of was the game with that Kansas was playing, was we're going to run around that guy. He's going to get upfield. He's going to get his penetration. He's going to be athletic and disruptive. So we're going to play into that by ignoring him, like you just said. So the question is, does Penn State do that? Does Penn State want to do that?
Want versus need are very different things. I think they don't want to, but they have to.
Yeah. So with this particular game, I guess how Caden Wallace plays, I think, is a big part of the conversation here with how Penn State's able to run the football, because they need to be able to run the football, and they can't do some of the things we saw on film. So what's their version of that? I think we'll see outside zone, which is you're running outside the tackles. You're going to see the tight ends in different positions. One of the things I love about Mike Yurcich is his ability to use formation to create advantages. And I do think they're going to attack the outside linebackers, the corners, the slot corners, who are good run defenders, right? But they're not as good. Yes. And so I think Penn State will have an advantage if they can get formation and scheme to get their good players in good matchups. And that's why I think you're going to see a lot of tight ends in the backfield. You're going to see a lot of Nick Singleton running laterally in that outside zone action. And then it's going to be about those players. If you're running away from Newton, the backside block is really important. So Salim Wormley, Caden Wallace, Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren, those guys are going to be really important to just keeping a lid on that guy and giving those cutback lanes to the running back, because somebody else on that defense is going to make a mistake. And then from there, you've got to be able to pass the ball efficiently in this game, because that's where they can be had. And that's something we'll get to in a little bit.
Yes, it is, because for those who are not aware, last year Illinois lost a few guys in the DB room. They lost a few guys who are not half bad and got drafted in the NFL because they were quite good. So you're right. They're going to have to attack the linebackers, go outside, and they're going to have to leave him alone. They're going to have to leave Newton alone. And they're going to say, you know what, everyone else, you're fair game. And they're going to have to dial up something real fun. I think today we're going to see quite a lot. And I know it's a bit of a change and a bit of a shift. We're going to see a lot of that tight end package, and we're going to see a lot of Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson should have a big game, and we'll get to the receiving aspect of this in just a little bit. We'll also make our move to the defense coming up and explaining gap sound. Penn State playing another running team, but this one's a Big Ten team, so it's more dangerous because they got that B1, that Big Ten logo on their jersey. Even though they played a good running team week one, but this one.
Oh, they're in the Big Ten. It's scary.
It's the right colors on the jersey.
It's not like there's going to be, 27 teams in the Big Ten come next year, basically?
Yeah. That meaning is a little bit diluted from what was traditionally over the last couple of years. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Coming up next, Kyle, what do we have? We have This Week in Penn State Football?
We are going right into a little bit of a break here on the show before we get into This Week on Penn State Football. That is going to be next. We got a little bit of time here. Right. We're chilling, we're relaxing, we're having ourselves a very fun time here on the Tailgate Show. So it's good. It's fun. We're having fun, T. Frank.
This is fun. We're having fun, which is the number one way of being like, that was awkward. We'll go to break and come back and do better next time. I get it. You didn't make it to today's game. You didn't plan ahead in time. Nobody's perfect. We totally get it. I'm T. Frank, and I'm here to help you with that for the rest of the season, though. Tixman Gym is your source for reliable tickets to Penn State home football games. Join the most exciting atmosphere in college football with Tixman Gym. Primetime games, noon kickoffs, big opponents, whatever you have in mind, whatever game you want to go to, they've got tickets for you. If you've been looking for a source of Penn State football tickets, a reliable one, Tixman Gym at TixmanGym.com, formerly PSUTixman.com, has been running his ticket exchange in Wilmington, Delaware for over 25 years. Every buyer is handled with courtesy and respect, and every purchase is guaranteed. Most tickets transfer to your Ticketmaster email address. So get your tickets, 302-521-8380 or TixmanGym.com. That's 302-521-8380. Are you a company that is passionate about athletics and wants to tap into the Penn State sports community? Maybe you're a community organization in State College, Center County, Pennsylvania, or even planet Earth. Are you interested in growing your brand and leveraging our YouTube and podcast platform? Or are you just a person that has some money to spend? If you're any of those things, or something I didn't bring up just now, consider advertising on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube show. We have a dedicated and passionate audience that is just waiting to hear from you. Through me, talking about your business on the show. That's how we do it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, email Michelle DeLee Hamilton at michelle@comanpub.com. That's michelle@comanpub.com. We're waiting to hear from you. Through me, talking about you. Again, that's how we do it.
Been missed or missed in the sense that you're not going to be able to turn around and run. I mean, Drew seems to have a pretty good connection with Tyler Warren. We saw that from a pitch and catch aspect several times on Saturday. And I think that those things are kind of what's going to keep games going, what's going to keep drives going, which is going to, eventually end up in points against opponents that are not at a level that Delaware is at. So I think there's encouraging signs that can be gleaned from this. You're not going to look at it and say, well, it's great that Penn State overwhelmed, FCS opponent. That's what they're supposed to do. But there are like micro aggressions, I guess you could say, that you could look at Penn State's offense especially and say, hey, they're doing the things that we thought that they were capable of doing.
Yeah, one last thing I'll say about this is that this is also a good warm-up for one of the teams that they're going to see on the schedule, because guess who plays three safeties? Ohio State's defense, coming from the Big 12. Aeneas Hawkins on the injury report today, not a part of the show, didn't travel with the team here, so I'm Thomas Frank Carr stepping in for him on these key matchups brought to you by Stocker Chevrolet. Is this the year that we see the Penn State offensive line take over games? Nittany Lions have flashed some impressive, efficient blocking through the first 2 weeks, and have given the team balance and a threatening profile heading into Big Ten play, but they're about to face Jerzon Newton in the Illinois defensive interior. We talked about it last segment. One of the best units in the country. Last week, Kansas all but abandoned running inside the tackles in any traditional sense. Instead, they ran around the defensive line, creating large seams inside when attacking anywhere between the tackles. Will Penn State try to do that? Or will they try to play with the best and attack this unit head on? J.B. Nelson, Caden Wallace, and the Penn State tight ends have put on film that they're here to knock you out. If this group can open holes in the defensive front, they should be able to go toe-to-toe with any group in the country and put the rest of the Big Ten and the nation on notice. How and where Penn State finds success in the running game can make or break for the Nittany Lions and offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich. That is today's key matchup. Let's talk about what's around that, though, Kyle, let's talk about the Penn State passing attack, because one of the things we didn't get into in the setup for this, and I always like to try to set up these things to make them make sense of, here's what you're dealing with the Illinois defense. Now, let's talk about the other end. Their pass coverage is not good.
No, it is not very good. And a big reason to that is, as we discussed a little bit ago, they lost some guys last year. They got a few guys drafted in the NFL. Of course, Devin Witherspoon going number 5 to the Seattle Seahawks in the NFL draft means you lose a corner. You're like, okay, that's not terrible. And then you move down to the second round. They also lost Jartavius Martin as well. Yep. 2 DBs, 2 of their best, realistically, DBs. They lost both of them. And they still have a good overall defensive room with Xavier and Miles Scott, but not the same. It's not the same when you have literal NFL talent sitting here on your team. So that's where you're attacking them. You're attacking them there. You're saying you don't have the talent to take on Keandre Lambert-Smith or Harrison Wallace or any of these guys. So they're going to go after them. Go after them hard.
So this is the area where the defense for Illinois and what their personality, as you just eloquently put, they had DBs, right? They had dudes on the back end. So they played over the last year plus the beginning 2 games of this season. They were in the top 5 in cover 1, which is aggressive press man coverage, and cover 0, which is even more aggressive press man coverage, where you have no safeties deep to help. They are one of the most physical, aggressive teams in college football over the last 2 games. But they lost last week because they did that. And as you mentioned, they have some good DBs out there, but Tyler Strain so far, last week especially, 3 receptions for 48 yards he allowed. Xavier Scott, teams have attacked him pretty aggressively. He has held up somewhat. Like he is not given a perfect performance so far, but 13 targets, 5 receptions, under 50% completion percentage, but big plays mixed in there as well. The real weakness of this team are the linebackers, especially linebacker Tariq Barnes. He allowed 3 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown last week against Kansas. Once Kansas got the running game going, Illinois had to respond to all of the lateral motion, and that put even more pressure on those middle defenders. You mentioned the Scott brothers in the interior of this defense. They were good week 1 and not as good week 2 when they were put in a situation where they were on islands. So far this season, I got to find it here. We talked about this on the Friday show. Barnes allowed 5 receptions on 5 targets for 83 yards and a touchdown so far through 2 games.
That's not great if my math is correct.
That is, again, a perfect passer rating when you target number 8 on the Illinois defense. He is, again, this whole defense is set up to take away the run game and funnel your targets to the corners, who are supposed to be these great press man corners. It's somewhat similar to what Penn State does in terms of leaning on their corners, but that's where we talk about a shift in this game. We talk about this is a pivot game for both teams. Is that what they do? Do they try and do that against Penn State with their athletic receivers and their talent, especially if Penn State goes 11 and they put 11 personnel on the field? What does that do for Penn State? What does that do for this matchup?
Sometimes a coach will say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sadly, their defense is going to be broken if they bring it into this game. It broke because, again, you lost Devin Witherspoon. You lost a top 5 NFL draft pick cornerback who can do that, who can play this way. You can't really do it with the guys you have now. And you're also going up against a team that, respectfully, is better than who you've played so far and has, I would say, a much better wide receiver room in terms of who's going to be on that outside. I know we'll discuss the outside, the inside, who's playing where this week for Penn State. But I think Harrison Wallace, Liam Clifford, Keandre Lambert-Smith, I'd chuck Malik McClain, Caden Saunders, Amari Evans in there as well, and Dante Cephas in terms of better receivers than whoever they've faced so far with Toledo and with Kansas. Yeah. So it's about to get hairy if you stay with this cover 0 defense. It won't work.
Yeah, that is the general consensus heading into this week, and we've some people that I trust that have good insight, good intel. Sean Fitz talked about it this week. He expects them to pivot and play more cover 3, which for those out there that just to give an example, everyone plays every coverage, right? So you can't. Unless you're Florida and you play with hubris, which is why I think that what their system isn't working, is they're only playing like 2 coverages and you know what's going to happen before the snap most times. Most people mix in 2 high looks, 1 high looks, zone, man. It's about what you major in. And this team can go to a zone look, cover 3. It's out of the same basic formation as the cover 1 press man stuff. So it's about how you're playing out of the same looks. And do we see more of that cover 3, that soft shell, what we've seen, try to keep a lid on the Penn State passing attack, and then allow your front to do what they do? And that's kind of the idea in general with this team, is allocate fewer resources to the run game, but have them be outstanding. And then you use all those other coverage defenders to shut down a passing attack. So there is a path forward if Illinois can work out the kinks here, but the problem with that is twofold. If Penn State goes to their 3 receiver packages, Keandre Lambert-Smith goes to the slot. You bring in Malik McClain on the outside, and you bring in, Trey Wallace, Dante Cephas, those guys rotating on the outside, and you have your best player matching up against the Scott brothers. You might even get them in a zone situation on one of those linebackers. 24-28 was the Will linebacker.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other interior defenders, another place that I thought Penn State could attack in week 1 against that 4-high defense for West Virginia was with the tight ends. When you have 3, it's fundamentally different when you have 4 deep defenders versus 3. The seams of the 3 coverage players open up opportunities for players like Keandre Lambert-Smith and Theo Johnson down the middle of the football field. So far, Theo Johnson has been used differently. He has not been targeted as much as that deep threat. Last year, he was averaging 17 yards a catch. So far this year, I think he's got 2 catches.
He has 2 catches. Both came in the last game.
Yeah.
There was no tight end catch in the first game against West Virginia. There was 0.
Yeah.
So Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson last week got going a little bit.
So this is a week where you could see more of what we saw last year from Penn State. And that's something that, again, they've played in this formation. They've played with these guys out on the field, but they haven't deployed this real, this is the threat offense from the 3 receiver set. So that's coming into this game. I think that's a major matchup between the 2 teams, is how is Penn State going to attack the middle of this field, because that is where Illinois is their weakest. Strain has struggled so far on the outside, but the other corner, number 3, he's a good football player. So you're not going to get just whatever you want access down the middle of the outside of the field on those deep shots.
Yeah, Tavion Nicholson is who you're thinking of.
Yes,
number 3.
Thank you, Tavion Nicholson. You're not going to get just a green light on every go ball. Penn State is still a good team and should threaten that part of the field as well. They have not done that as much, but this is what Drew Aller is best at so far, is taking what the defense is giving him. And if they give you Theo Johnson in single coverage against a slow linebacker, you've got to take that.
Yes.
You've got to take that, and that's an area where Penn State, if they can get into favorable passing situations, to take shots, play action passes where Newton is not going to wreck your pass protection. Because that's the other side of this. If you're going to be doing stuff down the football field, one of the things that happened last week was when there was pressure, Daniels, the quarterback for Kansas, was good at getting out of that pressure, escaping, and extending the play. Drew Aller has similar skills with less mobility. Can he get away from Jazon Newton? Can he extend plays? And can Penn State keep a lid on the pass rush? Because they have been susceptible at times this year to stunts and twists and things on the interior where there's not great communication and there's not good depth and technique on the interior of the line. So, a little bit twofold. Penn State has their own weakness here in this situation, which doesn't make it a green light of this is going to be a blowout. There could be an avenue forward where Illinois is able to
get to Aller, they
gum up the passing
do
game.
Things. They can do things on defense that cause Penn State problems. They give them a fit, and as you've kind of laid out and we've discussed, Newton is going to be a very big part of that, but it is going to be that interior D line where if they can get to Aller and Newton's going to get to him anyway, you're done for if you're Penn State, because that is then where the problem comes in, is because if you can't stop anybody on the D line, what are you going to do? You're going to run the ball? That's not going to work. Pass the ball? That's not working. So at that point, what do you do? Yeah, and Newton is the kind of player that if you allow him, he can take over a game. He can wreck your game plan. But I expect Penn State has a plan for that. They're not. Mike Yurcich is a smart, adaptive offensive coordinator. He's not going to run the same stuff into dead fronts. They have not done that so far. And that's why we're talking about the offense first and not the Penn State run defense, which is the headliner for Penn State fans coming into this game. Because if the offense can throw the football and they can run enough to be effective, this game is over. Yes. They need to score points. That was the problem in the other game, was they couldn't score points. You had an injured Sean Clifford in 2021. You have a healthy
Penn State quarterback this week with Drew Aller, who is on fire. He's completed 84% of his passes so far this season. He's top 5 in college football in being responsible and smart with the football. So Penn State is not going to get themselves into bad situations in this game, and I expect him to be a major factor in this game. I know we talked about the running backs and they could get some big plays today because of the, not keeping a lid on everything, and maybe a Tiger can't change its stripes in 1 week and you get some cover 1 and you get a busted run. Drew Aller's going to have to be a big part of this game, and his arm, I think, if they go with zone coverage, he's shown you can't give him time. He is going to find the right receiver. He's patient, he's smart, he sees the full field, and that is kind of a death sentence for a team if they don't get pressure on that guy. So that's why we're setting everything up today with the offense and the passing attack and the running attack and how they decide to attack this team. I'm getting in the flow.
Yes.
It took me 6 days, but I think we got here.
Yes.
I think we got it down. Oh, I'm not supposed to hit the table.
That's okay. Hit the table as much as you want. Pound the table, because you're right. You're absolutely right on all of that. And this is where I think last week's game was really interesting for me, because Delaware played 3 safeties, which you don't see almost anyone else do.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often. So he had to pass and take what the defense gave him, which I think let him get the tight ends cooking a little bit, give it to Warren, give it to Johnson, and all of a sudden you're now rolling into this week where you say, okay, Drew Aller, if they give you something over the top to counter Lambert-Smith, just chuck it up to him. You know what you're doing. You'll have some time. But if not, it will work. So he's feeling good. He got last week cooking, got the tight ends involved a little bit because they had literally 0 catches week 1.
Yeah.
Which you don't want to see a goose egg on anyone's score chart, especially if you're playing with 2 tight ends. You see no catches and no targets for either of them.
Yeah.
But he got them some targets last week, got them into it a little bit, and now he has at least something going with them. And at some point today, if there is any sort of blown coverage, any sort of go route over the top, someone can get free. Keandre Lambert-Smith, he's going to find him because he's now going to be like, okay, I've got everything else working. They're going to try and stop that. I'm just going to check it to him.
Yeah,
dude's going to put in work today.
There is a certain systematic failure that happened for this team, this defense 2 weeks in a row. So if Penn State can find that system to break them down piece by piece, that's the recipe for the blowout today, is to find one thing that works and make Illinois adjust and adapt during the game, because eventually you run out of good options because the other team has put you on your heels. Penn State football does a great job of getting us access to players and to have conversations with them throughout the week. On the BWI Live show, we talk about those things. We give you the insight that we glean from talking to those players, and of course our inside sources that we have over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But one thing we don't get to a whole lot is actually just letting you hear from the players. So this is no context college football quotes. It's This Week in Penn State Football.
Just going, and that's what you kind of want. You just want him to go, let loose, go fix some mistakes later. But I like the way he's starting off so far. He's gonna keep growing on that.
I'm not sure. I just play, and I guess it just ends up being physical. If anything, my physicality, I feel like it helps set a tone. I feel like that's always how I play football.
You said it. I think that's just kind of how Drew is. He's a quieter guy, but he leads by example. He says things when things need to be said.
Yeah, I think it really started for all of us over the summer when we got back up on campus in May after the spring semester. I think that's when our biggest growth hit, because we were literally throwing 4 to 5 times a week every morning, 3 to 5 routes a day, and I think that's when we saw the most improvement.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's important to know every position on the field. It just makes your job easier, and it makes you more versatile, which it helps you out. It helps the team because you can do multiple things.
I think the main thing that's been great about Coach Diaz is the culture that he brings into our defense. He really coaches us to be perfect, and obviously everyone's not going to be perfect. We're all human, right? So it's just, I feel like that just brings the excellence out of us.
Yeah, I mean, Kane's done a really good job this year so far. There's a different type of physicality to him, on the line when you're watching this film. He's dominating a lot, even more than he has in the past already. And he's a lot more consistent this year too, which I think has been really good for him, just mentally and physically, just being able to perform at a very high level for an entire game.
I think it's been good. I said before, I think it's clearly the better place to call the game. You can see it better. You're removed from the emotion. I think Danny O'Brien's done a good job on the sideline as well. That's helped. We've had to iron out a few kinks, things that we got to get ironed out, in terms of just a little bit of the differences on the sideline.
Kansas was getting to the second level on a regular basis and just gashing them. I mean, it's just it was really routine by the second quarter. They were just doing whatever they want. So get past that first wave, maybe get those ends upfield a little bit, and you've got an opportunity for some cutback runs. I think Singleton has an opportunity to break some off. Curious how they play their safeties after watching Delaware, and to a certain extent West Virginia, try and keep everything in front of them. That's got to be, like, if you're a defensive coordinator, this is a first-time defensive coordinator, that's got to be the way to go if you're trying to defend Penn State, is try and keep everything in front of you. So curious to see how Illinois does that with the horses that they've got. Got three really good ones really up front, and then beyond that, there's a bunch of question marks. So curious to see how they can fold over and fill gaps and things like that. Penn State's offensive line is going to be a test, especially on the interior. Norzad, Nelson specifically. You've got those big bodies in there. I mean, Nelson is huge. There's going to be some essentially sumo matches in there.
Some brawling on the interior.
There's some beef in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then just keeping those guys off balance. I think really, if you're Penn State, you're going to move Drew a little bit. I know it's a 3-man front, but you move him around a little bit, hit those crossers, because in the first 2 weeks, Illinois has been susceptible to guys coming across the middle, and Penn State, I think they found something there. Like it's been their chain mover. You saw Cephas do it last week. You've seen Keandre Lambert-Smith and Wallace do it. So they've got an opportunity to bring somebody from the backside. I don't think that they've got the speed in the secondary to keep up with those receivers for that long. Like they've got some good coverage guys, but not guys that are going to step up. They lost a lot to the NFL. Like there was a lot of talent on this team last year, and they're filling holes. It's what every really college team goes through, and Illinois, I just don't know is deep in the sense that they can plug and play and have success like they have in the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's just interesting watching game scripts play out, and Kansas attacked laterally so much that eventually, Illinois starts deploying more resources to contain the lateral run, and then there's giant voids in the middle of the defense where you've got those linebackers in space by themselves. And I wonder, and this is something I've been wondering this week, Fitz, is like, is it tempting to try and replicate the same game plan from another team, even if you don't do the same way, kind of the same style of attack, to say, hey, we're going to do X and then create opportunities off of that? Or do you have to kind of just come up with, okay, what's the new way we attack this defense? Because they're obviously going to see that coming. It happened 7 days ago.
I mean, this is college football coaching. So it's like, take someone else's stuff, make it your own. That happens all the time. Like it is, flattery, imitation, whatever you want to say with that saying. So I think that's how you go about it.
The Blaze Alexander Family Dealership, celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community. Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home of the $1,000 lowest price guaranteed, with 19 locations throughout Pennsylvania. Let's talk about the defense here.
Yes.
We have not gotten to the defense just yet. Kyle, what do you want to know about the defense?
I want to know everything you've got on this defense.
Oh, no.
Yes.
We don't have enough time.
Oh, boy. So do you not know the third string DB's name and all of this fun jazz? Do you not know everything?
No, I'm saying we don't have enough time here on the show to get to all of that stuff. So yes, we could get to all of that, but the question, the major questions, obviously, for Penn State football fans are, the whole season has been, can Penn State stop the run? Can Penn State stop the run? And they've allowed 114 yards a game, so Penn State fans are now, like, a little triggered. I guess nervous.
I will quash the triggering a little bit and preface it by also saying, well, 66 of these yards in one of those games was on a single run.
Yes.
But outside of that, Delaware had 74 total yards of offense.
Yep.
66 of the yards they had on top of it were a single run.
That's
so
correct.
Knock that out. It alleviates a lot of their pain, a lot of their stress.
Yeah, and the way they have performed so far this season has been up and down, but mostly adjusting and adapting. It's not that they have had continual issues, as you pointed out, with leaky run defense. So let's go back and let's take a look at the Penn State rushing defense in the first game. They allow 59 yards in the first quarter. They allow 10 on 10 carries in the second quarter. We talked about this week with Curtis Jacobs, fan of the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and the BWI Live show. Awesome dude. He was talking to us this week about how they communicate and how they adapt to things live. And one of the things that I thought was interesting in the way he described it was it's on the linebackers to make the defensive line right. So the way that this defense works is they ask the defensive line. He said, we don't ask them to do a whole lot. And I'm like, I've watched the film. You ask those guys to do a whole lot. So on most plays, or on some plays, a defensive coordinator will drop a scheme where you have the entire defensive line take a step this way, like change gaps together one way. Sometimes you'll have linebackers twist. They'll exchange gaps. And then sometimes, I'm trying to give the visual as much as without moving the camera. And then sometimes you'll have defensive linemen exchange gaps on one side. On some plays, Manny Diaz does all three at the same time. So there is a lot going on. And that's where Penn State's linebackers have been, that's been the issue at times this year, is that the defensive line is asked to do something and they physically can't get to the gap because of either a physical error, like their technique was bad, or the other person was athletic, they won, or the offense did something that prevented whatever was happening from working, from being right. So the linebackers need to clean up those mistakes and to adjust their gaps, because if you're 4 yards off the line of scrimmage, you can see what's happening and you can make those adjustments. So that is where certain players have struggled to do that. Jacobs, veteran, he's been pretty steady, obviously, maintaining two different positions, both the Will position and the Sam position. Abdul Carter struggled a little bit in the first game. And then you look at Kobe King, and he's the one that I think is the most interesting in this situation because he has been hot and cold in terms of what I've seen from him on film. Sometimes he's trying to be a playmaker, it seems, and he's going backdoor on some plays and not following the play. And sometimes he's lights out, he's in his gap, he's a 240-pound smash-mouth middle linebacker, and it's that consistency and that communication that Curtis talked about earlier this week that is important for this team to, in between series, they've been able to correct their mistakes. There have been times watching film with Aeneas, we watch Chop Robinson make a mistake, 2 plays later, West Virginia runs the same play, and he's already fixed his mistake. He's already learned from that. So the thing about this particular defense is they have enough veterans that when something is thrown at them, they can adapt and evolve. And they might be getting a couple more. We're 4 minutes away from the unavailability report. It's not an injury report. It's who is available. So Penn State getting a couple players back at practice this week. We saw Amin Vanover and Keziah Izzard on the defensive line and Daquan Hardy. Don't know exactly. James Franklin was very obtuse. He was very James Franklin about it in terms of, will those guys be back? We'll see. Too early in the week. So they might get more veterans back on the defensive line, which from that perspective, I think they've still been good. Like, fans are worried coming to this game about the defensive tackles. I don't think that that's necessarily the problem here. It's just the overall defense causing problems for itself that they have to correct during the game. There aren't any guys making superstar plays out there. But this defense plays well together, and I think they have the players up front to play a cohesive, good game. And against this Illinois offense and this offensive line, they should be the team that is the better front. I say that with as much hesitation as I possibly can.
I am very intrigued to see exactly what we get from this defense because so far, I think this is okay to say, outside of C.J. Donaldson for West Virginia, they haven't been tested almost anywhere by anybody. I think that's a kind way to put it is I love West Virginia. We love all of them. Pat McAfee, alumni, whatever. They didn't do much. Donaldson was the only scare on that team. He was
they didn't have the balance.
They didn't have a balance. And Delaware, is an FCS school.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get a real test from anyone there.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a test. They haven't been tested by anyone who has been up to their level, I think.
Yeah.
Is a kind way to put that.
Yeah.
Is kindly saying there's a difference in standard here.
Yeah.
And now they're going to get an actual team because they have that Big Ten asterisk, that Big Ten little logo on their jerseys.
By the way, Kyle's a Syracuse guy.
I am a Syracuse guy.
If you can't hear the sarcasm in his voice about the Big Ten, honoring the Big Ten logo, that might
Big
be why.
Ten. Yeah. ACC for the win. Syracuse is a top 10 offensive defense currently in college football. I won't hear anything else.
Those are the stats. That's all I care about.
Those are the stats. Top 5 in both, baby. Let's go. Go Orange.
Yeah.
We're not here to discuss the Orange. We're here to discuss the team that technically plays in Orange, is the Fighting Illini.
Yes.
And I just am very interested to see exactly if this team kind of plays up to where they should be in terms of Penn State's D-line. Because now they're getting a real competition. I joke about the Big Ten, but you're playing a real team now.
Yeah.
West Virginia, week 1, it's always going to be an odd game.
I'll give West Virginia in terms of they didn't have balance, but Garrett Green was a good quarterback and a great first test that is a lot like Luke Altmaier in terms of mobile. His legs will be a part of this game. We talk about gap soundness and what we kind of just described how it works. The other part of contain and gap sound is in the passing game with athletic quarterbacks. And that is one area where I'll say, yes, Penn State needs to be much better with their front four especially, because when you start to pass rush, your linebackers have two obvious responsibilities. They have to cover their zone, and they have to be on lookout for the quarterback escaping. So you have 4 players to cover the gaps and your rush lanes as the defensive line. It is very much more on the defensive line overall to maintain gap integrity against mobile quarterbacks, and they have been pushed upfield. They have been thrown off their blocks by chips and double teams on the edge, especially. Like the defensive ends have not played up to the area that I think that they're capable of and that they know they're capable of. And before this season, all offseason, I was saying Chop Robinson is a first-round pick. He has done a lot of dirty work for the team. He has gotten other guys free runs at the quarterback. That hasn't worked out so far for Penn State to get those sacks necessarily. But he also, in his opportunities, has not played with the strength and the size I was expecting from him after he put on that weight this offseason, playing above 250 pounds, kind of that threshold of minimum for what you'd like to see from a defensive end in terms of, especially for the next level projection of being a full-on defensive end that can play the run and play the pass. He's been good against the run. Like I want to make that clear. I think it's shown up there. His balance and his attack of offensive linemen, I want to see some domination wins from him
He's been a little lackluster so far. You've seen like where he could be. You've seen the level he could be at, but he just hasn't gotten there yet. He's still waiting for that one game where he can let himself loose. We're waiting for Chop Robinson to go, and he hasn't so far.
So the stars for the defense, they've played really good team defense. The stars haven't been the stars quite yet. Last week and the week before, Penn State sets a lot of stuff up for Abdul Carter, especially in the pass rushing game, and that's part of the conversation here with Chop Robinson is they're setting a lot of stuff up so that Abdul Carter either gets a free run up the middle or he's stunting around the outside. Where kind of like you send your I don't hunt. Mm-hmm. But you send your bloodhound out into the reeds to get the duck, to flush the duck out.
Yes.
And then you take it out. They've done a lot of that with stunts up the middle and then Abdul Carter wrapping around to get the quarterback flushed from the pocket and to get an easy sack. Same thing in the run game. They've tried to set him up with a free run at the running back to get those tackles for loss. Carter's been showing up in that sense, even if he's missed some tackles. The defensive ends, when they are rushing 4 and it's the obvious pass rushing situations, that's where I want to see more from these guys. But they've got to get Illinois into those obvious pass rushing situations, and that's in this game where the shift, and I said that week 3 could be a shift for Illinois. They need to win this game. Like, they can't lose 2 in a row. We might see more from Luke Altmaier, the runner, than we see from the passer that we've seen in previous weeks, because they have not used him as much of a rushing threat. He had 7 runs in the game against Kansas. He had a big run, the 70-yard run for a touchdown. Once it was 34-7, and that was on a passing play where he was scrambling. It was cover 1. We could see more of that this game if Penn State plays a lot of aggressive man coverages, and if you leave a QB spy, and if that spy isn't Abdul Carter or Curtis Jacobs, you might have an issue with containing that guy with everyone's back turned and running with the receiver. So we could see more from Altmaier, the runner, which would cause Penn State some issues, and might make Penn State fans feel like, here we go again. But it's a different equation than it is in the run game specifically when you're trying to stop this Illinois offensive line. That the right side is not as good as it has been in the past. They don't play with the same cohesiveness and the same overall effectiveness as even West Virginia. Like, that was a really good cohesive unit up front. These guys, you can beat them. They don't make a ton. Yeah, they don't make a ton of mental mistakes, but they will whiff on blocks, if that makes sense.
Yes, and Luke Altmaier, for those wondering, is their leading rusher this season, which is a big part of it. He's got 22 rushes, 139 yards, averaging over 6 a carry, which you might say, okay, over 6 is a quarterback, whatever, but that means he's getting out of the pocket and he's running around and he's getting the yards he needs to.
Yep.
So he is getting where he needs to be. The rest of the running core has not done a lot, though. So it's going to kind of be on him the entire day if he scrambles, runs around. Because Reggie Love has been okay. Josh McCray has been okay. At best, they have a combined 150-ish yards on 35 carries. Not great out of running backs. They have a total of 307 yards as a team, and that's what Penn State got last week alone.
Yeah. So that first game, I would say, like, game script against Kansas is one of the reasons why they didn't have a lot of rushing yards last week, because they're chasing, they're putting their passing offense in to effect earlier in the game. And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of the Illinois passing offense. I got a little bit like frustrated watching them, and I took it out on Luke Altmaier of like, this guy's not any good. And what I really was trying to say is, this is some basic route combinations, reading half the field, not really things that could challenge a defense that is playing well. So Altmaier is a decent quarterback. He's going to use his legs. He's got a good arm. He can hit targets in tight windows. Penn State, they're going to have to be on their A game to keep a lid on the passing attack, because there are some threats in the Illinois passing attack. But put the ball in his hands and then rush him. He does not have good pocket presence. That's one area where he got sacked quite a bit, and you can get quick. That's, again, going back to the defensive ends. You can get quick wins against this team, and you can shut them down, but you've got to get him in those third and medium to long situations where you're expecting them to throw the football, where they have to throw the football. So it's the same script as it is every week for Penn State, which is be good enough on run defense to put them in a third and situation where your defense can shine. And this game, it's just it leads to a systematic breakdown. Where other teams, they might get a couple on you. This particular offense, with the way that they run, it's a lot of RPO. It's a lot of screens and things that are no thought throws. It's all an extension of the running game, and they've got to have a multi-dimensional threat to beat Penn State, because what we said I expect Penn State to score points, so that's going to be something they need to get to. What we need to get to right now is we need to hear from James Franklin. Each week he spends a lot of time talking to the media, and this is the Coach's Corner here on the Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships Penn State Football Tailgate Show.
Last night it was fairly straightforward. I will, like, full disclaimer, as you as well saw, T. Frank, the defensive line and offensive lines were working together towards the end of the period that we were watching, and conveniently, as it is such, these 6'6" behemoths more or less shielded the media from seeing any of the action. And so my insights on the offensive line this morning are nil. I cannot provide you that because they did not have that yesterday at practice. However, what we did get a good look at was the quarterbacks, certainly, and the receivers and some of the tight end usage. I thought you made a great point yesterday after practice. I mean, just it's an area of the field that they might be able to exploit and have some success with. There was a little bit of a, I don't know if I want to call it a change, but Keandre Lambert-Smith has been working at different, he rotates through the different receiving lines pretty frequently, right? One of his greatest strengths this season for Penn State is his position flexibility. Right. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can do a lot of different things. And so one notable thing to notice yesterday was just that he started when they initially started doing passing work, he started in the slot, which is a little bit of a change from recent weeks. So does that bump Liam Clifford down a little bit? Do they intend to use him more in the slot? Conversely and concurrently, I should say, on the outside, you saw Malik McClain. So, maybe this is the week that Malik McClain, who obviously has made an impact in his first couple of weeks at Penn State, maybe he is in line to get his first start this weekend. So should be interesting to see. Fairly straightforward, but this is a team ready to take its show out to Illinois.
I love that, Nate. I love those observations because they tell you some insights into what you might expect from Penn State this weekend, which, spins us into our preview of the game coming up. But Fitz, I want to come back to you. I feel like maybe I rushed through defense. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Anything that you saw?
So we've hit the point in the season where it is like not go through the motions, but it's the situation where you don't glean very much because it is the same drills every week. It's the tackling drills. It is the safeties catching interception. It's really a bunch of the same. So a lot of it's personnel based right now. I thought just one random observation. Joseph Mupoy, the freshman defensive lineman, that kid is huge. In a way that he does not look like a freshman.
Penn State Football Tailgate Show here on 99.5 The Bus, the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. The Blaise Alexander Family Dealerships, celebrating more than 40 years of service to the community. Blaise Alexander Family Dealerships has a vehicle to fit your budget and transportation needs. Home of the $1,000 lowest price guarantee with 19 locations throughout Pennsylvania. We're going around the Big Ten, Kyle.
Yes, we are.
Last night, Virginia and Maryland. Maryland put a smackdown on UVA, that is pretty much a norm now in college football. University of Virginia, not that they've been a consistently good football program, but I don't know they've been this bad in a while. 42-14, Maryland rolls. Talia Tagovailoa had 342 yards passing. So big game for the Terps and their quarterback, who has been hot and cold in his time at Maryland in terms of being just an outright force, and then sometimes entirely overmatched, and just as it always is, the quarterback, he's not an island. The players around him have to help him out a little bit. So Maryland looks like they, at least in this game against Virginia, a pretty complete offense. Illinois, Penn State coming up at noon, and of course this is an early game, so there's a lot of things yet to be decided, but we were talking about your Syracuse Orange. Of course, the media journalist person here went to Syracuse. surprise.
Got my bracelet on.
Yeah, at least you didn't go to Northwestern.
Hey, my sister went to Northwestern. I'll have you know.
Of course she did. So Syracuse showing up on the schedule. That's the reason I'm bringing it up. They are playing who today? Give us a rundown on who's playing today.
They are playing Purdue in West Lafayette in Indiana. The Syracuse team, by the way, I know they've played some bums so far, is the nice way to put it. Colgate in Western Michigan. But they're coming into this game. They were about 29th overall in the coaches and AP polls. They were just outside of the top 25. But they get Purdue in Purdue today. Syracuse is coming to this game real good. We might missing our top player, Arondé Gadsden. He is a NFL talent out there as a wide receiver and tight end kind of combination of things. He plays both positions.
Wasn't his dad an NFL player?
His dad was an NFL player.
Yeah, Arondé, he's a junior?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is a junior. Right. But they come into this game. Garrett Schrader's played real well. Syracuse plays real well. So they're going in 2-0 against Purdue in the Big Ten. Syracuse is currently predicted to win this game 75% to 25% for Purdue. And that's what I like to see. I like to see that here. It's just good. It's fun. It's joy. It brings me joy seeing an ACC school, especially my school, beat a Big Ten school.
Yeah. Well, there's other teams on this schedule that we can get down. We're not here for the Syracuse breakdown.
You're not?
No, it was an excellent breakdown. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I learned something. I like learning more about football. Michigan at Bowling Green. So once again, Michigan starting out with just the hardest schedule in America.
Oh yeah.
Nebraska is hosting Northern Illinois. Michigan State, that's the Peacock game, is hosting number 8 Washington. A Big Ten rivalry matchup. For the future. Ohio State has Western Kentucky. Rutgers has Virginia Tech. Some of the other games that are interesting, Indiana is hosting Louisville. Minnesota is at North Carolina, and Northwestern is at Duke. Western Michigan is at Iowa. Those are the games around the Big Ten. We'll keep you up to date on all of those. The availability report, more importantly, for Penn State is out. And they're getting back the majority of the players that we have talked about on the show today. Amin Vanover, Daquan Hardy, and Kazai Izzard not on the availability report. They are not out or questionable. Malik Mega is still out. Alonzo Ford, Landon Tengwall both out for the season. Smith Vilbert not out for the season on here. Interesting that the way I'm looking at it, Alonzo Ford, Tengwall, season in parentheses. Smith Vilbert, who was James Franklin has said is out for the season, not listed as out for the season.
Interesting.
Just put a pin in that for later.
This feels like what Aaron Rodgers said yesterday, for those wondering. Aaron Rodgers specifically stated, I might try and come back this season from an Achilles tear. That's what this kind of feels like to me.
Okay. Harrison Wallace, questionable, is the other interesting one here on the availability report. He's questionable for the game today. We'll see if he suits up. And, of course, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is a great place to get that information. We've got guys at the stadium watching the warm-ups, giving you the intel of who's and was the ones and the twos, et cetera, et cetera. So a couple things we haven't really talked about on the show today. We got to Luke Altmaier and the passing attack. We haven't gotten to the Penn State DBs in 3 weeks.
No, we have not.
Haven't had a whole lot of work this season, so that's going to be interesting to see if that happens today. I was looking this up. They have the 6th fewest passes against in all of college football.
Oh boy.
So yeah, and I don't think it's going to get any better this week against a team that wants to run the ball, play ball control, and not put the ball in the air. So it's going to be like October before they see a legitimate passing attack, because I haven't seen a minute of Iowa, but I know Iowa in my soul after watching them for a decade. They're not coming in with a passing attack that is going to throw 30 times either. So this Penn State secondary, is there a ball hawk out there? It's down to it now of you've got to make every target count, because there aren't a whole lot. And right now the turnover king from camp is leading the team. And that's Dom DeLuca, the backup Sam linebacker.
Dom DeLuca had 1 pick last week. He had his pick 6. He almost had a second one. He should have had a second one. He should have had that second one. He dropped it early in the game, and you could see he was mad at himself because it should have been a pick 6 as well. So he would have had 2 pick 6s in a game, and that's it. No one else has interception this season. So you're sitting there saying, okay, when's the turnovers going to start kind of piling up? Because James Franklin hammers it home of we got to win the turnover battle.
Yep.
There was some fumbles last week, but nothing to the extent of winning a turnover battle in a game. DeLuca's was good.
Yep.
But now you're looking at yourself saying, hey, Johnny Dixon, hey, Kalen King, hey, literally everyone on this defense, if they put the ball in the air, which no one has against Penn State, are they going to get a turnover or two?
Yeah.
Is it going to happen? Is this going to be the week where Illinois might try even though they are a run-first offense, try and put it in the air, Luke Altmaier, and say, they haven't been tested yet. I want to try and beat them a little bit and get them off guard. And will that backfire on
There's
them?
a couple of places that I thought Delaware, I'm always looking for how is another team going to watch this film and go, oh, okay, so we can use that. Delaware attacked the slot safeties, the slot corners, Kalen King, Jalen Reed. That's been the place that most teams have attacked Penn State, has been in that particular area, not going after the outside corners, not going after the slot, or some of the safeties in deep coverage. They've been going after those guys when you match up and you're playing a safety in against a slot receiver or a slot tight end. I'm wondering if Illinois will attack, because they use their tight end quite a bit. Luke Altmaier, he is good on those pre-snap. It's an obvious read, and I'm going to pick my target and then throw. He's been good at those areas. If you've got a good arm, he can get the ball out on time and in rhythm. The part that I think Penn State has to do is they have to confuse him and take away that first access throw. That's an area where he has struggled this year, especially if you put him under pressure. He is 3 of 13 under pressure. So really bad completion percentage. We talked about his pocket presence leading to a lot of sacks. This team has to take away that RPO and the screen and force him to make some more complicated reads. He has gotten to his second read about twice this year. And part of that is the nature of the quarterback, and part of that is the nature of the offense. So going from Drew Aller, who's doing a full field, getting to the backside of his play and hitting guys for big plays, or at least for non-negative plays, this is an area where Luke Altmaier doesn't do that. So the quarterback matchup, the quarterback battle is decidedly in Penn State's favor, but Altmaier can do things against this Penn State defense that if you give him the clear read, and this is where Manny Diaz and the way they play opens the door for that of, we're going to do what we're going to do, and we don't care if that's good for you. We think we're going to win anyway. If they're playing a lot of aggressive man coverage, and Keaton Ellis or Jalen Reed or Kevin Winston, if they're in man coverage and they don't get their man, could lead to some plays and keep them on the field for Illinois. So that's going to be kind of the matchup on defense in the secondary that I'm looking at this game, because I just don't think, especially when you've got your best receiver is a slot receiver. So let's see how they attack, and I think they're going to, similar to Penn State, attack on the middle of the defense. We're going to take a break here. We've got to get back to our predictions and wrap up the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, next. Some guy says, part of me wants to just dominate this game and have a very simple offense. The other part wants Yursich to open the playbook, give us a taste of the evil genius for the year. So this is a great point, and this is kind of the 11 or 12 personnel conversation. The passing game and where they attack and how they attack. Penn State has the horses. They have the quarterback to attack the full field. You're going to see that in the game, but then it becomes what percentage of, are they going to lean on Drew Aller and avoid running the ball as the primary plan on Saturday, or are they going to attack in a different way? It's easier to attack with 3 receivers than 2 tight ends, even if they're good tight ends and really good. The fastest tight end, Theo Johnson, is one of the slowest wide receivers on the team. The fastest wide receivers create dynamic issues with the passing attack of stretching zones, getting into places that other teams can't react to in time, and creating bigger windows for the quarterback. So does your offensive line hold up against 1 or 2 excellent football players that can wreck the game? Because if he can't stand in the pocket, or he can't step into the pocket, and that's a big thing with a dominant defensive tackle, it's harder to step in the pocket if the pressure's coming from the interior. You can still roll out. You can still find different ways to get around that pressure, but Newton could absolutely break down a passing attack quickly and get you in negative yardage. And that's a thing about this, and Fitz made this point last show on Thursday that I think was very good. Kind of like the same thing with West Virginia. Don't go 3 and out and get those front defensive tackles tired. Once they're off the field, you can do what you want. The depth is not good. So you can run inside zone on the second drive if the starting defensive tackles aren't out there, because their depth is not as stout. So how do you attack, and how does that create issues for the other team? Because even if they don't get explosive plays, but once again, they're methodical, they stay on the field, that's going to cause some massive issues for Illinois. Grubby says, Grubby421 says, Drew hasn't taken many deep shots so far. Is this him being conservative, risk-averse, or should he be taking more shots downfield? I would... The last two teams, by their nature, have been conservative and kept a safety in the middle of the field or kept 4 deep in order to limit the explosive plays. Penn State still got explosive plays in the first game. Against Delaware, literally they kept sometimes 4 safeties, 5 safeties deep, and just played with coverages that they were disciplined to not bite on things and open up voids and bust coverage. So were there plays that Drew Aller could have made that would have been more explosive in the passing game? Yes. He missed a couple of throws, but overall he made the right decision. This is the Penn State. This is the Penn State football tailgate show, Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. The good thing is everyone else can hear. I can't hear anything. So I'm
winging this.
I am flying this ship blind. Well, I'm not flying the ship. I am the co-pilot here. Kyle has been doing an awesome job over there on the controls, being a part of the show, and also running everything by himself. So excellent job by him. Thank you again to everyone who's participated in making this show possible, including you, the listener. Dusty, the engineer, has been excellent in terms of providing support from afar today. And it's been successful so far in getting everything on air 99% of the time.
Yes. Hey, we had some kinks today. We worked them out, but that's okay. What team doesn't have a kink they got to work out and get through?
Right. We're still winning the game, but you know the defense allowed a touchdown early in the game, and that's what we're getting into today is our predictions here on the final segment of the Penn State football tailgate show. Just a couple minutes here. I'm going to let you go first because I'm interested to see, like, after this conversation here, Kyle, by the way, you know, he is still learning the football team. He's still learning Penn State specifically, and he's doing an excellent job of knowing that and then also studying the opponent week to week and having something intelligent to say here on the show. So if it sounds like I've been Kobe all show and ball hogging and being
Andrew
ball dominant,
Okay.
yeah, like we're working as a team and working to our strengths, but he's been doing an excellent job of providing insightful commentary on a team he is still currently learning. But I'm interested to see, kind of as somebody who isn't too deep, what you think of this game. What do you think is going to happen?
What I think about this game, I am intrigued to see exactly how Penn State finishes the game. Not as much as the start of the game. I think the start of this game is going to be pretty even. Both Illinois and Penn State are going to get to hot starts, get a touchdown or two, back and forth early. I want to see Penn State lock down. Second quarter starts, lock the game down, end it in the second quarter.
Yeah.
That first quarter, you let them go, you let a touchdown in or two, like how Delaware scored early against Penn State. Prediction-wise, 38-17, and those 17 points all come in the first quarter for Illinois. But after that, Manny Diaz and the crew are saying, no more. Nothing's happening.
You're thinking that Illinois is going to get out to an early lead.
I think Illinois gets out to an early lead, but it becomes a score-for-score affair early, and then as the game wears on, so does the Illinois offense. It wears and tears and breaks and doesn't get back up ever again.
So this is the thing I've saved here, kind of like the last thing that I think is the most important facet for Penn State football today is do not, I repeat, do not go 3 and out in this game, especially early. Kind of like with West Virginia. There's a lot of parallels between those two teams where the front is pretty good for West Virginia. This is a great front for Illinois, but the depth is not there. So I said, like, you can't run inside zone against this team. You can't run between the tackles. That's when the starters are on the field. You can do whatever you want, like in terms of running and having some success against the interior with Penn State football. So I'm thinking that they are going to be able to put the ball in Drew Aller's hands and keep everything going and make sure that this team doesn't have any opportunity to breathe. I think Penn State is going to be able to score early and often. So we are going to see Penn State win 35-20. I think there's some garbage time touchdowns here for the Nittany Lions. That's going to do it today for the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Kyle F. has been here as our producer. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. We will be back for the post-game show coming up after Penn State, Illinois.